Thank you. I wanted to talk a little bit about a technology-neutral approach and also about natural gas. So yesterday, the committee announced our intention, as you know, to chart a legislative path towards a 100% clean economy defined as net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and this is the target that the science says we must achieve if we're to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, avoiding the worst effects of climate change. And I know this is going to be a challenge, but I think we can do it. So let me start out on the technology-neutral approach. Dr. Hausker, you covered this in your testimony. Could you just explain why we should take a technology-neutral approach to comprehensive climate policy?
Yes, I think I'll contrast it to there are some very serious people in the climate policy community who would like us to commit to 100% renewable energy as the solution. And then there's another group of equally serious people that say we should take a technology neutral approach, leaving the door open to things like nuclear and carbon capture on fossil fuels. And the reason that I am in the camp of a technology neutral approach is that we are likely to hit some obstacles if we try to lock in just a narrow set of technologies, just renewables only. It may be possible to supply all the world's needs with 100% renewable. One can't predict the future with certainty, but it is much less risky to invest in multiple technologies that can get us there as long as we manage all of the environmental issues. There are not only just CO2, but there's other issues related to fossil fuel extraction and combustion. With nuclear, we need to make sure the plants are safe and that we can safely store the waste and control proliferation problems. But particularly, it will be very difficult to keep costs affordable and go to 100% renewables. We can go deeper into that if the committee wishes.
All right. I wanted to ask some of the others about this too, but I have to get to natural gas. So if anyone else wants to briefly comment and answer the question about the technology neutral approach. Mr. Cohen?
Yeah, may I just add a couple points to Carl's comment? First of all, as I set out in my testimony, I would go a little farther and say the vast majority of studies that have looked at the electricity sector have concluded that firm zero carbon energy, non-weather dependent, whether it's nuclear or carbon capture, is going to bring costs down. And there are some outlier studies that suggest that, but I would say that that is a distinct minority of the studies out there. Second point is, renewables great for electricity, not entirely clear how you decarbonize cement, steel, or how you decarbonize all of heavy freight with renewable energy. So there's some, even if you could do 100% electricity, 100% renewable on the electricity grid, there are other sectors to worry about.
All right, I'm gonna move on because I want to ask about the role of natural gas. Dr. Cletus, in your testimony, you discussed the near-term challenge of avoiding an over-reliance on natural gas. Could you explain your concern with this scenario and why it should be a problem, why it could be a problem for meeting our 100 by 50 goal?
So the reality is right now in the U.S., we're seeing a tremendous build-out of natural gas infrastructure. It is one of the drivers for the significant amounts of coal retirements we've seen. It has helped integrate renewables online. So there's definitely a role for natural gas. The problem is that if we look ahead and we look at the fact that natural gas is still a fossil fuel, comes with CO2 emissions, a coal-to-gas switch will just not be enough to meet our climate goals. And further compounding that problem is that we have these methane emissions from natural gas that are leaking, very potent greenhouse gas heat-trapping emission. And that could mean that just by natural gas being built out in this way, conventional natural gas, we could completely blow past our climate goals. We have to get our arms around this problem and limit this unmitigated build-out of conventional natural gas. Natural gas with CCS in our modeling shows up as it could be a contributor to a net zero world. That's the way in which we need to be leaning.
All right, I appreciate it. Now, Mr. Cohen, you touch on this issue in your testimony, and you stress the importance of eliminating super pollutants such as methane. Do you want to elaborate on the importance of addressing the methane emissions in order to meet our 100 by 50 target?
As I set out in the testimony, the problem with methane is that it's 87 times more powerful as a warming pollutant per unit than CO2. So very important, if we use natural gas and we decarbonize it with CCS, but we leave the methane out there, we're not doing ourselves any favors from a climate standpoint. The agenda before us is pretty straightforward. First of all, the EPA has regulated or has regulations in place to deal with new sources of natural gas, but that's only about 20% of the total. We need to extend those regulations to cover existing wells. We also need a lot of RD&D to really button up that system and make it zero methane leakage. And there are many things we could talk about in future hearings that would do that.
Thank you. Thank all of our witnesses.